we are saying exactly. There's a
You're listening to the official Reformed Stoic podcast, covering politics, philosophy, theology, conspiracy theories. I'm ready to get to the bottom of this life. Are you? Join Wolfgang, Sketty Squad, Purity Gang, as we strive to take dominion over this dying planet. I am Reformed Stoic, and this is my podcast. Am I good? Let's go. I'm good. I'm hood. I'm just good. You know I really would. Are we here with the gang? Y'all wouldn't know anything about some gang activity. Skitty. How are my people doing today? How are my people? People now. Short man sit out. Fact. Short man sit out happened. Fact. Short man sit out is the reason everything is the way it is, dude. Low key. Short man sit out happened, and that's why this year's been so crazy. I'll bet you guys miss the short people now, huh? Let's giddy. Oh, right. Fam-lam. Boom. So, a little bit of uncovered territory today. Once we get to the World War III section, we're going to have to kind of find some material on the spot. I kind of ran out of time to find material because I really was putting a lot of thought into this private security section. There's a lot of directions this private security topic could have gone. It could have gotten really woke. We're not being woke at all today. We're going mainstream sources. We're not going to the schizo tinfoil hat parts of the internet. But we might return to this topic at another time and get super woke about it. I just want to familiarize people with the concept of private security, see how it relates to our country in the mainstream. It sounds like there's a lot of private security being employed right now because the cops are spread pretty thin. So there's articles about like Chicago hiring private security to protect their neighborhoods and whatnot. What's up, Supreme Bean? Rick Perry, Reformed Stoic Superfan, Spear Gang Sketty Squad, Big Dinner, Chang, let's Chang it. Billy Villamoto, man, the whole freaking gang is here, dude. Let's go. All right. Yeah, we'll start doing that. We'll start shouting out the gang. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get it cranking, boys, for the news segment. You're listening to the Reformed Stoic News segment. Let's go! All right, let's get nice and cozy. Nice and cozy, friendos. So, how the private military industry went global. Now, this is old. This is from July 23rd, 2020. But this is going to give us some insight into private military. Let's see, does it say anything about private security? Yep, the private security business in the U.S. So we got 12 minutes and 20 seconds on the private security business in the U.S., private military going global. This seems like an interesting little topic here. So let's get it rolling.
In December 2019, former Nissan CEO Carlos Ghosn made his dramatic escape from Japan. He allegedly had some help from a former US Green Beret and his son. Michael Taylor, a former Green Beret, and his son smuggled him out of Japan in a music equipment box. And more recently, a company based out of Florida named Silvercore USA launched an ill-fated coup attempt in South America. It was a poorly planned attempt to overthrow the embattled president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. In Seattle, a television crew's protective detail disarmed protesters who had gained access to abandoned police firearms on May 30th, 2020, amid a wave of protest after the death of George Floyd.
He was contracted by one of the news networks out there for private security. He did 4 years in the Marine Corps, and then after doing his 4 years in the Marine Corps, he ended up getting into private military contracting.
Private security is expected to grow to an $81 billion industry by 2023, and that's just in the United States. There exists a higher risk, higher reward sector that attracts people with a unique and expensive skill set only acquired through military experience. Some of these jobs are word of mouth, others are hiding in plain sight on employer websites and job boards. Sites like Shooter Jobs cater to private security roles, and the compensation is highly competitive.
Think of it as like Delta Airlines. You know, you get started as a U.S. Air Force pilot, and then when you leave, you go to Delta. So it's a kind of a crass analogy, but it's the world of mercenaries. It's an illicit economy.
Some of these individuals are part of what are known as private security companies, or private military companies, better known as PMCs.
Private military company is a term of art that is code for mercenary.
They are profit-driven and strive to show value and efficiency to their clients just like any other company. They can provide executive protection, training expertise for other security agencies, companies, or government clients. Their heavily armed employees can be seen at U.S. embassies, on cargo ships, traversing dangerous seas, or even training soldiers and police in foreign nations.
Or even walking around in your neighborhood being fucking weird with sunglasses on and their hands in their pockets, kicking rocks and trying to pretend like they're not fucking weirdos.
Although there are numerous companies in the US that provide these services, there are other nations such as Russia that have their own PMCs. One Russian PMC, the Wagner Group, gained notoriety in Syria and was involved in a clash with US forces in 2018.
Russia's private security industry has grown in leaps and bounds over the last couple of decades.
I mean, mercenaries are the second oldest profession. Machiavelli knew how to use and fight with mercenaries. We at war colleges, we don't even study them. The intelligence community does not collect on them. I think this could be one of the biggest insecurity threats of the 21st century. And it's unfortunate that
it could be one of the biggest security threats of the 21st century. Wow, very interesting insights. Yeah, they don't really answer to our government the way, say, like a regular police officer would. These guys are kind of operating on their own agenda, and they get paid in money. So if you got money, you can call up a private security firm and be like, hey, bro, LMAO, here's 30 grand. Can you follow this guy around and make his life a living fucking hell? I think that's kind of how it works.
not much is known about it.
After 9/11, the US found itself embroiled in two major conflicts, one in Afghanistan and one in Iraq. Following the initial invasions, there was a need for more manpower to train the new security forces in both countries. The US military is an all-volunteer force, which means rapidly increasing the size of the military would require conscription, also known as the draft, which was notably used during World War II and Vietnam. One answer was to have the private sector fill the gap instead.
There are some people like that, just doing it for the money, but actually, there's all sorts of strange people out there doing it. Some are doing it for the money. Some people are doing it for the adventure, and some people were, they're vets of Iraq, Afghanistan, other wars. They come back home, they find out they don't want to be a Walmart, checkout guy or gal, and so they go back to what they know.
The free market rapidly reacted to the profit potential of the massive government contracts to provide a myriad of services, including private security and protective services details.
I know specifically for guys coming out of the special operations background, there's some fairly lucrative contracts that can be had if you have the right skill sets.
At the height of the Iraq War, there was one contractor to every military service member deployed. The ratio is now 5 contractors to every 1 U.S. soldier. Not all of these are security roles. Contractors do everything from laundry to electrical work to construction. During the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, companies such as Blackwater, Triple Canopy, and DynCorp were responsible for fielding heavily armed and trained employees, and also recruiting and organizing security contractors from a multitude of nations such as Chile
and Pinkerton, who is currently hiring in my hometown if anybody's interested.
Peru, and Uganda. Recently, even as the U.S. military footprint in the Middle East and Central Asia has diminished, spending on contractors has increased. The Pentagon spent $370 billion on contracting services in 2019. That's $164 billion higher than what was spent on contractors in 2001. According to a new study from Brown and Boston universities, about 53,000 U.S. contractors were stationed in the Middle East in 2019, compared with about 35,000.
Cats blew out the freaking litter box, dude. I might have to do the funny cats segment early so I can go clean the litter box. We'll get through this first.
U.S. troops.
Day rates were $1,000, $1,200 a day and up for certain people. And so they were getting insane amounts of money and then living like that money was a career, right? And now all of a sudden it's like you've got some time in the military under your belt and maybe your marriage is already stressed. And now you're doing this contracting thing where you say, oh, I'm just going to go make some good money. But now you bought a house, you bought a couple cars, you bought some toys. And now you're relying on continuing to do these contracts to pay those bills. And it becomes this cycle that you can't really escape.
Privately hired security is one of the world's oldest professions, and although there are an estimated 1.8 million people working security jobs in the US alone, the efforts of private security companies are notably different than your average mall cop. The landscape of the private security industry in the US is constantly shifting.
Damn, dude, I feel like I met celebrities because Frank Underhill of Underhill Securities lived in my neighborhood in Vegas, dude. Whoa, isn't that crazy? I feel like I met celebrities. Underhill Securities, man. Private security firm. Crazy! I wonder why they moved to my neighborhood.
The firm, formerly known as Blackwater, now known as Academy, merged with its competitor Triple Canopy in 2014 to form the Constellus Group. The Constellus Group was bought by a private equity firm, Apollo Global Management, for around $1 billion. These private security companies tend to employ former military, usually with infantry or special operations backgrounds, to take on higher risk, higher reward opportunities. The employees of these companies at times can be teaching foreign military clients, such as the Iraqi military, or protecting a client, such as the contractors who defended the U.S. Embassy in Iraq after the assassination of the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani in early 2020. They can also be used in personal protective roles, like protecting State Department employees. However, recent examples of private security companies, such as Silvercore USA, are prime examples of what can go wrong in this conflict-driven industry. Silvercore USA started as a firm focused on executive protection and school shooter prevention, staffed by former special operations troops. Eventually, the company attempted to overthrow the Maduro regime in Venezuela, resulting in 2 employees, both former Green Berets, being captured during the ill-fated coup attempt.
Not surprising to me that particular company dabbled in other aspects of security. I think that they saw.
And let's not forget who was staying at his house. Our buddy driving around Nathaniel Fari's Intrepid vehicle. Intrepid, Underhill Securities, like peas in a pod, baby. Having slumber parties. Wow. People working for some weird CIA proxy agency like Intrepid having slumber parties with Underhill Securities, a private security firm. I wonder what kind of overnight games they were playing over there.
This as their potential
right across from my house.
Big fish, and like a lot of other kind of, get rich quick schemes, it's sometimes, too good to be true. And I think that maybe this was one of those scenarios where it was just a little bit too good to be true, and it was a little bit more complicated than maybe what initially met the eye.
Another example of the unforeseen consequences involves the rise of the Wagner Group, a private military company based in Russia.
The Wagner Group is a Russian private military company, okay?
CNBC, ever heard of them? Little company called CNBC?
They're like Blackwater, but much more lethal, and they have a lot more free hand. They work for the GRU, which is Russia's military intelligence directorate.
This private military company has been employed in Syria and Africa. Foreign affairs experts have accused Russia of using the Wagner Group to further its own goals overseas. On February 7, 2018, a group of pro-regime Syrian forces, including Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group, launched an attack on U.S. forces that included tanks and armored vehicles. U.S. forces fought off the attackers in a 4-hour battle, leaving hundreds of pro-regime casualties. The Wagner Group is central to one theory behind the ongoing controversy around Russia paying Taliban insurgents to kill U.S. troops. One reason for the bounties could be revenge for the Wagner Group mercenaries killed by U.S. forces in Syria in 2018.
I think it's important to keep in mind that it's not easy to connect the dots in a straight line from the U.S. strike on a so-called Wagner contingent in February 2018 in Syria and what's happening today in Afghanistan. It's just a regional reality that Russia will always have a stake in the outcomes in Afghanistan. What is significant here is the escalation up the ladder toward confrontation.
What was that badge? Interesting.
Up the ladder toward confrontation.
For the first decade after 9/11, the US was the primary customer for private security companies. However, as the US has diminished its role in the Middle East, other countries have shown a desire for private security companies to provide training, security, and in some cases, direct action in war zones.
I think the era of Blackwater and Triple Canopy and DynCorp and Aegis, I think that is a bygone era. They're in the future, but these companies were big. They were upfront.
The US military has invested in human capital, and the experience that Special Operations Forces have gained in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan holds a unique value in the world market. In the United Arab Emirates, some former US Special Operations soldiers were recruited to provide training for the UAE military, only to then find themselves in the legally precarious situation of providing direct military aid to a foreign government. In Libya, Russia's Wagner Group has been active in supporting the Libyan National Army commander Khalifa Haftar. As Wagner expands operations, U.S. firms have faced a much more austere period of government contracts.
I think companies also learned that that was not a money-making adventure for them. The headline risk was simply too much. It got them in too much trouble. And we're seeing like Constellus Group, which bought Triple Canopy, which bought Blackwater, they're like basically in default right now.
The rise of private security companies fighting in hotspots across Africa, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe has shown that other countries and private entities have recognized the value of hiring well-trained and well-armed security forces to perform tasks that otherwise would not be accomplished.
So like China, people have been saying for a long time, like, well, watch that space. When China moves into private military companies, it'll be big because they have the largest domestic security guard business in the world, However, Chinese, it's one thing to be like a whack and hut mall guard and a mercenary. That's one difference. The second is that China has they're not battle tested, unlike, say, the Russian military or the American military. So it's not like they have a huge core of hardcore vets that they can deploy. And they also tend to deploy their own Chinese military in Africa just under a different, sort of like not little green men, but little, red men or something like that. So they don't really use that model.
Eric Prince, the former CEO of Blackwater, is attempting to break into the Chinese private security market with Frontier Services Group, a security company based out of Hong Kong which aims to provide training to Chinese clients. Prince declined CNBC's request for an interview. Meanwhile, the Wagner Group in Russia continues to expand its footprint in Libya and the Central African Republic.
But what we found, interestingly, is that the majority of folks that we found in our data who sign up to become private security contractors in Russia are cycling through units in the western and southern military districts, which, is known for its counterterrorism sort of orientation, but also has a lot of these units that were transitioned to contract units, essentially. And so they're cycling on and off, it seems, between different terms of service. This is kind of a stopgap Band-Aid solution for Russia's challenges with mobilizing defense.
Nations in the Middle East have continued to hire private security companies to train and augment their own security services.
We're seeing ex-Navy SEALs, ex-Green Berets in Yemen fighting for Middle Eastern monarchies. we're going to see more of that. And I think if you're, or the, like the Silver Corps in Venezuela.
I think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs, specifically veteran entrepreneurs, that are kind of trying to find their way. And I think that's what happens with a lot of these guys that have these startup personal security companies where it's like, hey, we need to bring money in somehow. We'll kind of take what we can get contract wise. So one day that might be executive protection. Another day that might be, at a rally or something like that. And then, oh, hey, our name got floated around in the right circle. And now we're, staging a coup in Venezuela.
Or they're harassing someone outside of their home. Let's go. Thoughts in the comments. For those who found this interesting, there's a somewhat older documentary about PMCs, private military contractors, on YouTube called Shadow Company, which is pretty good. It's a more in-depth look at the history and the modern application of such companies. We called them contractors in the military. This isn't a secret. Most former military strive to get these jobs. It's not just combat forces. Repair U.S. planes. You can work with the Saudis, UAE. Some of them do it because of the thrill. It's not easy getting the job. Private militaries, aka mercenary companies, get a lot of applications each day from people who have served, especially people who were special forces, and still a good amount get turned down, including people who are special forces. Private militaries are pretty picky. There's so much more money in being private than being in the military. I've had plenty of guys leave for private security. I was approached personally. What the report fails to mention are the rules followed very strictly by a lot of these firms, plus the high qualifications a lot of the companies offer. The knights who say knee. The second oldest profession. An amazing amount of U.S. intelligence work is done by contractors and PMCs, including military intelligence. Private contractors also provide military intelligence and whole new level of deniability for governments and private entities for covert operations and counterintelligence. You don't say. Really? For plausible deniability, so like if you're trying to fucking harass somebody with a YouTube channel and you don't want people to be like, holy shit, the CIA is harassing somebody with a fucking YouTube channel who's a whistleblower. So they just hire a private security firm to move in your fucking neighborhood and hang out with Lance Cottrell, who invented the anonymizer. I hope you guys are understanding what I'm saying here. Like, private security firms are behind gang stalking. That's what gang stalking is. It's hiring private security, private detectives to harass you. And they can further contract themselves. They can employ felons and criminals, but private security and intelligence contracting is a big part of what gang stalking is. Winky, winky, wink. I was trying to be subtle about it. But the chat's pretty quiet today. An economic lean period can always be supplemented by illegal drugs, arms, or prostitution trafficking. So the mercenaries profession is as old as prostitution. When I started a private military with my friends and started giving protection to our neighborhood in return for money, police arrested us saying we were doing extortion. Doesn't make any sense. We were just doing business. That's right, Vlog City. Probably a big reason why PMCs are so successful is that nations don't pay their soldiers enough. Okay. It's a very interesting topic. Private security, private military. If they're talking about mercenaries, shouldn't they do a piece on politicians and federal agencies? There is a revolving door with the captured agencies and the industries they were supposed to regulate. Politicians just do the bidding of the oligarchs. I'm feeling pretty woke in here. Those agencies must be very popular also and continuing the work they did while in the military. Most probably have ex-Marines and Army personnel, and they are used in countries like in the Middle East and Africa. Don't forget Blackwater is owned by our Director of Education, Betsy DeVos, brother. A handful of family runs our country. Let's go. I wonder if you really can create a mercenary force called Merryweather and be tasked guarding secret superweapons. They're called contractors. A lot of guys get these jobs after being discharged or leaving the military. These guys are the guys who defended the embassy in Benghazi. History repeats itself. Do you remember East India Company? Oh, what's this guy saying? Stop saying that bullshit. You only get a few options in life. Did you take a dump today, yesterday, the day before? What about tomorrow, the day after? Okay. I don't know what that guy's trying to say. Jim in it. I mowed a lawn today. In war, one fights with his armies. In peace, one fights with his mercenaries. I'm liking these comments, guys. I'm fucking Kermit the Frog sipping a big cup of coffee over here. So you're basically saying half of the U.S. defense budget of $600 billion is paid to private military contractors? Welcome to America! Would you like some overpriced healthcare, rigged two-party system, or just casually exploiting the new generation of immigrants? I like these people. I like these people. So we're back to imperialism. Kings, high net worth individuals, having their private armies. Have you people not heard of bodyguards? That's legal, you know. I'm always waiting for that comment. If you got nothing to hide, you got nothing to worry about. Those are the useful idiots of the Post-Patriot Act system. Can't wait to see the rise of private air forces. Oligarchs always find its way to profit, even from humans' life. So it's okay when the U.S. does it, but when others do it, it's bad? Really? Now you're getting it. Now you're getting it. Oh, man. Man, oh, man. Am I feeling smug reading these comments? I can just imagine Markiplier and PewDiePie hiring their own private army. Well, they could. Money's power. All right, we're about ready to move on here. This is so juicy, though. I want to be a private military contractor, but I'd only have infantry experience. I read about the private military company in thriller books and saw them in the Hollywood movie Expendables. I had no idea. Is this the reality in today's world? The love of money is the root of all evil. 1 Timothy 6:10, dropping bombs. A lot of time they don't have choice since either risk dying in some other people war without getting paid good or just work in low-wage industry. All right. Well, that was juicy. Moving on. Private security guards hired amid Seattle police staffing issues. So you guys have heard about the left's call screech to end the police, defund the police. Guess who would be taking their place? There's a lot of these liberals are like, we could hire private security instead. But who do they answer to? Whoever's got the money.
Yeah, businesses and locals tell us this extra security is needed along that stretch of downtown that's overrun by the homeless and drugs.
Tourists don't go there, don't walk on 3rd Avenue. It's not safe.
That's Alexa Baer, urging people to stay away from the same street where she manages Victrola Coffee Roasters. She says she sees crime driven by the homeless and drugs that others agree you can't miss on 3rd Avenue between Stewart and Union.
There was a shooting a couple weeks ago.
All these people are going into the businesses and stealing from them, and the police hardly ever come around.
To help, the Downtown Seattle Association is paying unarmed guards from the private security firm Iron and Oak. They have a focus on de-escalation, DSA says, to fill the gaps in shifts because of SPD staffing issues. Locals have noticed what they're calling a dwindling police presence.
Things have just gone to hell. Between the riots, COVID, the shortage, it's all just kind of come together to create this vacuum that enables all of this.
DSA says it paid about $314,000 in the last fiscal year for private security, and about $250,000 to Seattle police to work overtime here. They're expecting to dish out even more this year, already doubling the number of private guards from 2 to 4, patrolling 7 days a week. Baer says the extra presence from Oak and Iron is needed to help prevent property crime or to keep the homeless from harassing her customers.
What would you like?
But says more needs to be done to help this area.
I don't think that having security is going to deter, I guess, like gun violence.
I talked to 2 women who reported this sketchy behavior to the AG's office. I mean, one woman told me she was told she got a negative test result, but she was actually positive. And the AG told me tonight it is absolutely outrageous that this company took advantage of people who were just desperate to get tested.
All COVID test lines.
Notorious for massive backups, this is the Center for COVID Control testing site. Lisa Sanchez desperately went to an Everett after her husband got sick.
Really angry, really, that you can put people at risk.
She says the site lost 2 of her tests.
Even though they couldn't find it when I was on the phone, it seemed weird that they all of a sudden found it.
Suddenly, she got a negative test result, but Lisa actually tested positive at a different county-run site.
Pretty floored that I was positive, although I had a suspicion, but definitely frustrated.
The Attorney General's office is now suing the Center for COVID Control, saying the company faked, delayed, or didn't provide tests at all.
It doesn't get much more significant than life or death, and that's what was at stake here as a result of their deception.
And take a look at this photo. The AG's office says the company stored week-old tests in garbage bags, piling them up rather than properly refrigerating them. Investigators say CCC backdated sample collection dates so that stale samples would still be processed.
So on so many levels, this company, they did not just act illegally, they acted unethically and jeopardized the health of thousands of Washingtonians.
I also had concerns that it may be a scam.
Barbara Baronian didn't even get a test result, even after traveling to 2 different sites, including the Lakewood site, which was later shut down for operating without a license.
I'm glad to see that they're being investigated, and hopefully that there'll be more notice to people.
So the main focus of this proposal is the pandemic and trying to limit people going into jail to help stop the spread of COVID-19. So that means initially people who commit certain crimes wouldn't go to jail.
They're frequently subjected to lockdown in a small cell, often with a cellmate, for 23 plus hours a day. This while hundreds of inmates are actively sick and spreading COVID-19. This while a global pandemic is still raging and spiking.
It's a pandemic-related proposal from the King County Department of Public Defense and others that would further limit the amount of people in jail. To do that, people wouldn't automatically be booked in for certain crimes. Some of the crimes they're considering include stealing a car, burglary of a home, certain kinds of theft charges, and failing to register as a sex offender. Recent COVID numbers in King County show out of the 1,300 plus people in custody, there were 61 positive COVID cases and an extra 63 people in quarantine.
This legislator is not very comfortable with the idea of setting blanket rules for who is in and not in jail by the legislature.
But the proposal left concern with some council members and officials from the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office.
It just tells the police, sorry, you can't bring them in. And that's a tough message for the police to hear when they finally found somebody who's causing a lot of damage in their neighborhood.
The better system is the one that we have now, which actually takes the opportunity for those high impact offenders to be in front of a judge, and then the judge makes the call.
Mary, the homeowners don't oppose the demolition, but first they want a chance to salvage what they can from inside. Well, officials here at City Hall say the house is just too dangerous and needs to be taken down immediately.
And all of this humanities, human rights, humanism type shit, altruism type shit. This is the golden key. Oh, we're doing it in the name. It's because racism. So, you know, we have to not put people in jail for selling drugs or burglarizing a home or stealing a car. Police are racist. Defund the police. Private security. Well, that's racist. Equal opportunity. Like, that's the golden fucking key that just makes their way into the legislature and paves the way to a totalitarian, Orwellian, Brave New World shithole government.
Weeks have passed since the hillside came loose and tore this home off its foundation in Bellevue.
All right, well, this news covers a lot of stuff. Let's move on. Government is doing such a great job at the city, state, and federal level. Sarcasm hype. I gave up on Seattle years ago. Once a beautiful destination, now a drug-infested, lawless, dangerous place. That's funny. I have a Seattle sweater that I bought in the Seattle airport when I was there with my kiddies. I gave up. They tried to station me at 3rd and Pine with nothing but a walkie-talkie. I quit and refused security to homeless-infested cities. The cartels run the politics. Whoa there, little buddy. I don't know if we should be saying that, little buddy. The cartels run the politics. There's absolutely no point in keeping these people safe so they can vote for more of it. Damn, dude. Well, let me just sip on my fucking coffee, bro. Don't waste your life protecting the lying landlords and crooks. There wouldn't even be homeless if they weren't forced into homelessness in the first place. They could only afford you because they kicked them out and raised rent for the new rich tourists. Wow. I'm going to watch Ghostbusters, guys. I got Ghostbusters 1 and 2 on DVD. I'm going to get through those. I actually really like Ghostbusters 2. How is this related to Ghostbusters? Just like the theme in Ghostbusters 2 where the ooze thrives off of the evil of the city. And then he goes on that lecture. It's like, well, everybody in New York would just as soon as eat your face off as say hello to you. This town runs on like shitty bad vibes and treating people like shit. And then they're like marching with the Statue of Liberty in town. Listening to that song. That has something to do with this. I can't remember what. The city's falling apart, damn it. Can't we just like have the Statue of Liberty like march around and everybody sing and everybody hold hands and fix everything? You know what? I might watch that. I think I'm going to watch the Sweetie Ghostbusters, finally, after all these years. Iron and Oak Security, do they have a waste management division also? We live in North Seattle and don't go downtown anymore. It was considered unsafe years ago. Damn, guys. Literally, it's time for like Batman. Somebody's got to protect these streets. Somebody's got to protect these streets. It's a city that wants to believe in good. People are afraid. The homelessness all over the city. Protect the city. Where's Christian Bale's Batman, guys? He's coming. He's coming. Thanks for being truthful. Now we can be more alert. I wonder who owned this security guard company. Does anyone know? Cricket, cricket, cricket. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Nobody has time to babysit druggies. Hell, they're not even competent to want counseling themselves, so social workers cannot help. You see, guys, when I'm thinking about how my society would be run, there are state-sponsored rehabs. I hear that rehab is like a really expensive thing. Not in my society. Rehab is like basically like jail, where it's like, oh, you're a fucking drug addict and you got to go to rehab. And it's like jail. You go there, you get forced to get clean, you get released in society, you got probation. In my society, getting people off drugs is just a part of the state. Seattle actually used to have a guy who dressed up as a superhero and went around fighting drunks. Phoenix Jones, let's go. Maybe you shouldn't have cut police funding. We're becoming Gotham without a Batman. Ha ha ha. The bastard gift. A city that wants to be believing good. Oh well, Seattle, this is what you wanted, to defund the police. You wanted this. So much salt, bro. You know, around here, we try not to get sucked into left-right politics, but the left is just on some crazy fucking nonsense these days. Republicans tend to, like, shill for billionaires. That much can very well be true. But the left is just turning cities into shitholes these days. Sad. It's sad. All right, let's move on. We're really dragging our feet today. This Dem reportedly boosted private security while pushing to defund police. Oh, this is pretty funny right here. Fox News.
Missouri Democrat Cori Bush has been an outspoken critic of America's police, but quarterly campaign filings reveal the Congresswoman shelled out $70,000 for her own private security. Here now is the host of Fox Radio's Fox Across America, Jimmy Fallon. Well, I understand that I don't think it's out of her personal pocket. I mean, this is campaign money that she's raised, right?
Oh,
and that's allowed. You are allowed to do that. And it is curious, though, that you would want to defund the police for everybody else, but you can raise campaign money to then pay for your own security.
That's why this is so infuriating. And I'm warning you, I'm a little hopped up on Easter candy right now. I'm in the mood for this. But that's why it's so infuriating. Cori Bush is the person who comes over to your table at the restaurant, says this is a no smoking section, and then lights a cigarette and walks away. Okay, because when she says her justification for spending on police security, 2 of the members of her detail were actual sheriff's deputies. So this did not start out with like private security per se. She was called out the first time they hit her for this hypocrisy, for having actual sheriff's deputies on the payroll. But when she says, well, my life wouldn't be safe without this security detail, neither would anybody else's. That's why we want police. And she is the worst type of congressperson because she's furthering the distrust between police and the communities, making everybody less safe.
So let's show our viewers. She said for this election cycle, what is it, 6 months? Is that the election cycle? All right.
Yeah.
2 quarters.
3 months this year, 3 months last year. She spent $300 grand. She spent 70 grand between January 1 and March 31 of this year. She paid, of which 50,000 went to peace security, not police security. Peace security. August 4th, she was asked about it and explained it this way. Listen.
I have private security because my body is worth being on this planet right now. If I end up spending $200,000, if I spend $10 more on it, you know what? I get to be here to do the work. So suck it up, and defunding the police has to happen. We need to defund the police and put that money into social safety nets because we're trying to save lives.
Jimmy, suck it up.
Insane. Yeah, just walk down the street and suck it up. No, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to our country. Defund the police is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And we need to treat the police as the teammates that they are instead of the enemies, the Democrats.
I feel like that's very libertarian. It's like, no more public police, that's the state. No more state. No more money to the state. No taxes. Stop trampling snake. We're not going to pay damn taxes. So if you want to be protected, you have to hire private security. And if you can't afford private security, well, then up comes Stefan Monalou. The free markets are an IQ test, and if you can't afford private security, you deserve to have everything stolen from you. I mean, that's libertarianism in a nutshell. The strong should dominate the weak.
Are positioning to be. And I say that as someone who's genuinely invested. Everyone in my family is a cop. I would have been a cop if it weren't for this thing called a background check. But getting past that, I'm still here to support them every day on the radio and the TV.
Yeah, it is
pretty good.
Pretty stunning.
So Apple's got a new software program. Do we have time for this? And there will be a pregnant man emoji. Will you be using this?
No, and
That is not a beer belly.
Yeah, it's not a beer belly. They actually make this in every single ethnicity, which is nice because this way people of every race can tell the world they failed biology. This is so dumb. And if we're gonna go here, why not emojis for other things that can happen, like the New York Jets winning a Super Bowl? I don't know, maybe even throw in the Bengals. I didn't mean to hit too close to home.
The Jets did win a Super Bowl
in '69.
Beautiful. It's a man with a baby. It's beautiful. She says, I have private security because my body is worth being on this planet right now. Apparently, what she's saying is the rest of us don't deserve to be here. She literally looked into the camera and said her safety is more important than the people's safety that voted for her. All right, that's pretty self-evident. Let me go take a quick bathroom break, do a little bit of kitty cleanup. Funny turkey? Are there funny turkeys out there? Yeah, I think there's some funny turkeys out there. Let's go. Funny turkey. I'll be right back.
You better go.
Animals and pets are sometimes cute, sometimes are annoying. Today's video features some of the funniest moments of animals annoying people. Get ready and try not to laugh.
Oh.
Don't run, he's gonna get you, Robert! Go home! Come on! No! Turkey, no! Oh my God, they're after me!
Hurry, get around.
It's okay. Okay. Do we have fun with the funny turkey? Let's live it. All right. Okay, so this is the Rand Corporation. This is the Rand Corporation. You can find videos of Jay Dyer talking about Rand Corporation. Our buddy Henry Kissinger used to work at the Rand Corporation. I'm going to be reading a book about the Rand Corporation soon. So these are our buddies at Rand Corp talking about issues in private security. The private security industry is as large as the public police, but little regulated. Okay, little regulated. Good to know. Major problems include abuse of authority, dishonest or poor business practice, non-reporting of crimes, and lack of public complaint channels. Oh, so if they do anything wrong, then there's no way to complain about it. So they don't answer to anyone, and they're not regulated. That's great, little buddy. Now the house reeks of Febreze. Directors and managers of both contract and in-house security forces should be licensed and employees registered by the state, contingent on set part-time personnel tailored to job requirements, with at least 2 days retraining yearly. Federal funds might well develop the curricula, materials, and methodology. Firearms training, now rare, should be mandatory for all armed guards. Concealed weapons forbidden, and company guns remain on company property during guards' off-duty hours. Above all, regulatory agencies should have resources enough to screen and monitor licensees and registrants, and to detect and cope with violations. An invited presentation to the first meeting of the LEAA-sponsored Private Security Task Force of the National Advisory Committee on Criminal Justice Standards and Goals. Alrighty, Roo. So just a little help from our friends. Thank you, Rand Corp. You keep doing all the wonderful things that you guys do. Okay. Police by another name. This is cityjournal.org. Demand for private security is booming in Minneapolis. In June 2020, the Minneapolis City Council famously vowed to defund the police department. Though their plans fell through, the fully funded MPD is nonetheless struggling. More than 250 officers have resigned or retired since then. Earlier this year, the Minneapolis Supreme Court ruled that the city has a duty to staff the MPD with a minimum of 731 sworn officers. But the department is at least 100 officers short of that target. Meantime, crime has spiked, with 96 homicides in 2021, doubling the number in 2019 and tying a 1995 record. Private security has stepped into the breach. The number of licenses approved for new private providers rose from 14 in 2019 to 27 in 2021, according to data from Minnesota's Board of Private Detective and Protective Agent Services. Demand is exploding as businesses increasingly opt for private guards over off-duty cops. Christopher Forrest started his private security firm, Unparalleled Security, after the rioting of 2020. Today, he has 175 employees. Forrest did not set out to start a private security firm, having previously worked as CEO of Minnesota's largest valet parking company. But after June 2020, his clients began approaching him with requests for security guards. These clients had once hired off-duty police officers for their security needs. But the MPD's image after the George Floyd killing made that more difficult. I've worked in private markets for 20 years and nothing guaranteed for me. All right, we've done quite a bit on this topic. High crime means that new clients, such as movie theaters, are entering the market for private security, says Richard Hodson, the chairman of Minnesota's Board of Private Detective and Protective Agent Services. Hodson says he knows of a retired police officer who recently got a license to run his own private security firm, but has had to turn down contracts because he cannot hire enough guards to staff them. Demand exceeds supply. Businesses still fear negative publicity from taking an aggressive enforcement. Here you go, Esoteric. You're a mod, buddy. Help me out with the doxers, please. Did that work? Did we do it? What happened? Okay, yeah, you're a mod. Okay. Businesses still fear negative publicity from taking an aggressive enforcement stance. Forrest says retail clients instruct his guards not to confront shoplifters. Retail is in a place where they do not want you to even address the person. He says, you are not to talk to them. You are not to approach them. You are not to ask to see the items in their bag. If they are purchasing something, you are asked to not look at the receipt. You are 100% visual deterrent, and that is all. All right, guys. Well, I think we've done a decent amount of time on this topic. We're going to go ahead and move on to World War III. We were pretty close to the end here. Let's just go ahead and read this final paragraph. Some Minneapolis residents still prefer to hire off-duty cops, whom the department makes available through what is called the buyback program. The upscale Lowry neighborhood established the Minneapolis Safety Initiative for off-duty police to conduct patrols. Residents are trying to raise $210,000, suggesting a recurring contribution from their neighbors of $220 a month for at least 6 months. The Minneapolis Safety Initiative attracted a significant coverage, including criticism from some who argue that wealthier neighborhoods are purchasing scarce police hours. Nevertheless, demand for private security is growing. McDonald and Forrest expect to see significant expansion in the year ahead. High crime and police shortages are changing the public safety landscape in Minneapolis. Alrighty, World War III. We'll end up in World War III, Trump says. U.S. saying exactly the wrong thing to Russia. Sky News Australia yesterday.
We are saying exactly the wrong thing. We'll end up in a World War III.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has delivered a chilling warning to supporters at a rally in Arizona on Sunday.
And now we have a war between Russia and Ukraine with potentially hundreds of thousands of people dying. We must demand immediate negotiation of a peaceful end to the war in Ukraine, or we will end up in World War III, and there will never be a war like this. We will never have had a war like this, and that's all because of stupid people that don't have a clue. And it's also because of the kind of weaponry that's available today. We never had weapons like this, the destructive capability of weapons, modern weapons. I know more about it than anybody because of the fact that I rebuilt our military. You could just look at Russia and say, see, when you talk about going to war, it's not as easy as people think. It's just not as easy. Who would have thought that would have happened? But remember, he's still got a second layer, and it's a very powerful layer. And we have to be very smart and very nimble. We have to know what to say, what to do. And we are saying exactly the wrong thing. We'll end up in a World War III.
The remarks come after President Joe Biden raised the prospect of Armageddon over Russian President Vladimir Putin's threat of nuclear war, reports The Hill.
US President Joe Biden has warned Russia could use nuclear weapons as Moscow faces mounting setbacks in its war with Ukraine. Ukrainian forces are making significant counter-offensive gains as they try to liberate Russian-occupied territories.
President Biden warns the risk of nuclear, quote, Armageddon is at its highest in decades as Russia continues its attack on Ukraine. Moscow has alluded to the possibility of using nuclear weapons after suffering setbacks on the battlefield. At a fundraising event on Thursday, the president said of Russian President Vladimir Putin, quote, he's not joking when he talks about the potential use of tactical nuclear weapons or biological or chemical weapons because his military is, you might say, significantly underperforming.
The reality is that if he did use a nuclear weapon, I don't see how the United States and NATO would not respond to that.
But as recently as this week, Pentagon officials said they don't have information that would require a change in the alert posture of U.S. nuclear forces.
We don't assess that President Putin has made a decision to use nuclear weapons at this time.
In Ukraine, Russia is facing mounting losses in its 8-month invasion. Ukraine's military says it recaptured roughly 200 square miles of territory this week. The gains have been primarily in the Kherson region. President Volodymyr Zelensky vowing to liberate those areas still under Russian control.
The day will surely come when we will report on successes in those areas that are still under the control of the occupiers.
And in an apparent rebuke to Vladimir Putin, activists from Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia won the Nobel Peace Prize today.
Whoo, boy, these are scary times, guys. Shameful that absolutely no current world leader is trying to bring an end to this conflict. How refreshing to hear a clear, concise, and highly competent leader. This isn't a personality contest. The stakes are too high now. It's about the survival of mankind, not CRT or climate change. Common sense is a rarity these days. Trump has it in spades. To be fair, the dude has been proven right for almost everything so far. He's a rising populist, and something tells me he's going to win the next election. And, I don't have like a lot of bad things to say about Trump. It's just that the idea that Trump is a hero, the Q stuff, like Trump is going to save us from the deep state. I don't know, guys. He looks pretty deep statey to me. But this system has an agenda that goes far beyond that of whoever is in presidential office. Let's hope Putin has the patience and wisdom to negotiate peace. No one should be poking the bear. Trump is right. Any fool aggravating the crisis is literally insane. Our government is too stupid to listen. Remember when we had 4 years of no new wars? That was nice. Wise man, who is the one met North Korean leader. He was talking about democracy and diplomacy, but us warmongers hate him. After 6 years of Trump on the world stage, and he gets things right at least 95% of the time, a pretty good track record. Why don't people listen when he makes these predictions? Trump going to be president for 1 month, and then everybody will gang up on him, and that will kick something off. Dude, we are more than on thin ice right now, you guys. Life as we know it, everything being fine. The era is coming to a close. The era of boomers and just capitalism thriving. Christmas, we got a family and it's time for Christmas. Presents under the tree. Let's go look at lights. Hey, let's wear green for St. Patrick's Day. I don't want to just be a doomsayer, guys, but all of these problems are lining up. Relationships. Look, I'm trying to mature beyond basically being a MGTOW guy or complaining about women. There's not going to be a lot more sweetie jokes. I'm supposed to announce that, guys. All the best sweetie jokes were in that podcast about men being single. I got to put down the sweetie jokes. Hey, let's celebrate. Here you go, sweetie. Here's $5. Why don't you go get Papa a pack of beer and put on something nice? Whoopsh. All right, that's the last one. We got to be serious over here, guys. Like, relationship problems. People are not getting married. Women are not having children. Families are not a thing. Men are alone and angry and broke and confused. There are a lot of problems. We're in a time where there's a lot of young, angry, fighting age men who don't have a lot in life. We are watching an escalating global conflict. We're watching the rise of this new world order beast system that has declared war on its own people. You guys can keep making the jokes. You guys can keep making the jokes. The jokes can live on, but I'm basically about to start making myself apparent to maybe people in my hometown. I've made my first post in a local group here. I'm getting ready to be exposed to a wider audience, and I have to be a little bit more mature, you guys. I have to it's fun to be funny. For the record, women, I hope the sweetie jokes, it's like a stand-up comedy. It's like a rated TV MA show. It's comedy. It's just funny, okay? I'm not like a misogynist. I think it's funny, but I got to start gearing up to be a more serious guy. We got to start leaning on the more serious aspects of what we're about over here, guys, because I'm confronting everything head on. I'm fighting back against this corrupt system. Alrighty, what do we got here? Biden, Putin's nuclear threats risk Armageddon, a couple days ago.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm John Dickerson in for Nora. Tonight, President Biden warns the world that we are closer to a nuclear conflict than at any point since the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. The White House advised there is no new information that Russia is planning an imminent nuclear attack on Ukraine, but the president's remarks demonstrate that the U.S. is taking Vladimir Putin's threats seriously, especially as
I have to smear very carefully and respectfully. I will be very eloquent and controlled and calculated with my smears from now on.
events continue to turn against him in Ukraine. Russia's military continues to lose ground, and Russia is losing
tactical smearing, if you will,
military-age men as they flee the country to avoid the draft. Putin has repeatedly reminded the West that nuclear weapons are one of his options in Ukraine. Major Garrett will start us off tonight from the White House. Good evening, Major.
Good evening, John. A midterm election is coming, and voter concern about stability and continuity in times of crisis might emerge as an issue. Even so, experts we talked to said the risk of Russia using a nuclear weapon in Ukraine is higher, in no small measure because senior Russian leaders have said they reserve the right to use their most dangerous weapons, and they're not bluffing.
President Biden ignored questions on his way to a speech in Maryland this morning after warning in stark terms of possible nuclear annihilation. We have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis, the president said at a private fundraiser. I don't think there's any such thing as the ability to easily use a tactical nuclear weapon and not end up with Armageddon. Mr. Biden said Russian President Vladimir Putin, having sustained multiple military setbacks in Ukraine, has no clear end game. Where does he find a way out? Where does he find himself where he does not only lose face, but significant power? Putin has warned recently he might use weapons of mass destruction. The White House said today there is no new intelligence suggesting Russia is taking steps to deploy battlefield nuclear weapons in Ukraine.
Does this feel like hype to you from the president?
Well, I just think it's unwise more than hype.
H.R. McMaster served as national security advisor to President Trump.
It kind of plays right into Putin's hands. You know, this is all Putin can do now is rattle his nuclear saber. And I think he has to know that if he uses a nuclear weapon, the consequences would be unbearable for him.
In an interview with the BBC, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said talk of nuclear warfare should startle the world.
They don't know if they will use or they will not use. I think that it's dangerous even to speak about it.
Putin is leading the world to the precipice of a nuclear war.
Mike McCall is the top Republican on the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
I think every nation in the United Nations needs to warn Putin this will not be tolerated, including the nations that have stayed on the sidelines.
In this tense atmosphere, the Biden administration announced this week it was purchasing larger quantities of a drug used to treat patients in case of a nuclear or radiological emergency. The Department of Health and Human Services said this move was part of an ongoing and, quote, long-planned, unquote, preparation strategy. John?
Major Garrett at the White House. Thank you, Major.
Comments. To even talk about using nuclear weapons is complete insanity. It just dawned on me, and I hope our strategists have already concluded that this could be a tactical retreat by Russian forces just before a tactical nuke. Damn. Nobody wins in war except the arms suppliers. One person's craziness is another person's reality. Oh, nuclear winter. I guess that's better than mean tweets, am I right? Rumor is he is already sleeping in his safe room. At least all the politicians will survive. Hey, God bless all you that made this possible. Way to go, laddies. Thank Biden for all this mess. Why would I thank him? Bruh. We're doing all right? Yeah, we're good. We're good. One more sweetie joke, just for old time's sake, before you go mainstream. I'll have to think of a good one. My trackpad is sticky. Hey, sweetie, didn't I tell you to clean my trackpad? Don't make me grab the belt again. Don't call the cops, sweetie. We already been through this. You know, it's just best to listen. Just learn your place, sweetie. Okay, that was a really bad one. It doesn't help when you call the cops, sweetie. We already been through this. Okay. Moving on. So I need to find one more World War III thing. World War III is now possible. I think everybody knows that. Let's see. What's like the absolute latest? Today. World War III news today. Not a whole lot. Maybe they just don't want you to see. BBC correspondent in Kiev interrupted as rockets strike Ukraine capital. Damn. That doesn't sound good.
Also full of symbolism. So the fear is that this could trigger a very strong Russian response. We saw yesterday that a residential area of the city of Zaporizhia, a major city in the south of the country, very close to the front lines, was hit. More than a dozen. So
okay, Hugo Bashega there, our correspondent in Kiev, obviously for obvious.
Woo! That doesn't look good. Funny that he is talking could trigger a strong Russian response, and seconds later the rocket impacts. I'm going to keep firing up those cozy movies, guys. I'm going to keep it cozy. I'm going to keep smoking a little bit of weed. I did not get a workout today. Darn it. I mowed the lawn a little bit. Maybe I'll get a late night workout in today. I'm going to go ahead and move to the final segment. Does the Bible command Christians to follow the government? A rocket hit the German consulate in Ukraine too. So what will Germany do in response? Yeah, guys, as far as moderators go, I feel bad about like mod drama in the past. You know, everybody knows that like I unmodded Rick Perry. Rick Perry could easily get modded again. I'm thinking about just modding everybody, dude. The people who are like always here. I always kind of said it was cringe to have an army of mods, but it's to a point where like the friendly faces, Vlog is like here all the time. We know Vlog, we know Esoteric, we know Kev TV, we know Rick, we know Midwest. I'm thinking about just like modding a bunch of people, but not right now. Just know that like the moderator shit's just not a big deal. I just don't want people doxing people in chat. So right now, mods, just no doxing. Whenever anybody's doxing anybody, just ban those people. And that's pretty much it, dude. I just don't want mods to like be ban happy for people who are like talking shit. People who talk shit usually eventually get banned. But you can let me make that call. Basically, just ban people who dox, bro. That's really all I expect right now. But I appreciate the help. And I think we're going to see an era where people get modded again. But it doesn't really matter that much. I don't want people to overvalue the position. We'll see what happens. But for now, I think I'm going to keep Esoteric as a mod. Let's get it. All right. Does the Bible command Christians to follow the government? Andrew Clavin. Let's get it.
There's a letter that was in the mailbag, I believe it was last week, from Bryson, that I think is just an interesting subject for discussion. He says, "Greetings and hallucinations, Lord Clavin, master of the multiverse. My pastor recently preached a sermon online where he said that we should follow government lockdown rules because of Romans 13:1, which says everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. What is your response when Christians use this verse to say that we must follow the insane China virus restrictions? P.S. I look forward to your show every week. It's great to have you back." Well, thank you for that. Yeah, this is an important thing because the Christian response to politics is not at all what I think either the right or the left says it is. Then you have the question, if governments are corrupt and if they do bad things, why doesn't Jesus take them on? And this has been a complaint about Christianity for a long time. Why didn't all of the people who defied, for instance, Southern slavery, all of them were deeply religious people who felt that this was a sin against the image of God. To enslave people as blacks were enslaved in the South was a sin against the image of God. But many people read the Bible and said, no, you're supposed to obey the authorities, and these hierarchies of authority are installed by God, and therefore the slave should obey their masters. That's what the Bible says. It says so in the scriptures. And of course, we understand that they were making a mistake. But what mistake were they making? If Paul says we're supposed to obey authorities because authorities come from God, what mistake were they making? And why didn't Jesus stand up against the Romans and say, like so many did, and say, you're enslaving us? To answer this question, let me digress, or to give you my answer to this question, let me digress for a minute and talk about Edmund Burke, the famous British MP of the 18th century, and he's probably the founder in a lot of ways of modern conservative thought. And the famous thing about Edmund Burke is that he did not support the French Revolution. He foresaw the terror. He foresaw what was going to happen, that it was going to become an oppression, that it was going to lead to war. He foresaw all that. But he did support the rights of the rebels in America. What was the difference? The difference was tradition. The difference was that the French were basically saying, we are going to wipe out all tradition and we are going to establish this new wonderful rule of reason. You know, all the kings are going to be wiped away. The last king is going to be strangled with the entrails of the last priest. We're going to rename the days. We're going to rename the months. Everything is going to be new. Just like we see these guys now who are tearing down our traditions, tearing down the statues of Lincoln, tearing down the statues of George Washington, like the people in San Francisco, the buffoons in San Francisco, who say they're going to take Abraham Lincoln's name off schools because he didn't show that he believed that Black Lives Matter, right? They want to get rid of traditions because all those traditions are oppressive, and we are going to be free. We're going to have this new kind of freedom. What's the problem there? What's the logic of that? And the logic of that is everything you believe comes from your traditions. You didn't just, your idea of justice didn't just fall on you like the rain from heaven. Your idea that racism is wrong. Racism was not wrong, and is still not wrong in many countries. It is wrong here because of the ideas that have come down to us. They come down to us through Christianity, they come down to us through Greece and Rome, but these are the ideas that form us. So when you tear down those traditions in your ignorance and your stupidity, as the left is doing now, you basically are tearing away the foundations of the very ideas you're trying to establish. And that is the contradiction of radical politics. The contradiction of radical politics is when the French revolutionaries said life, liberty, right? When they said, liberty, fraternity, equality, those ideas came from someplace. They came from their traditions. Every moment leading up to the person saying liberty, fraternity, equality, every moment created those ideas. To say, oh, this evil past, this oppressive past, these evil kings, these evil priests have to be gotten rid of, is to say the very ideas that I'm trying to establish are illegitimate. It's a paradox, right? It's a conflict of interest. And that's why when you see people tearing down statues of Abraham Lincoln, I'm thinking of the statue, I think it's in Philadelphia, that showed Lincoln raising a black man to his feet. And they said, well, the black man is bowing down to Abraham Lincoln. That's a terrible thing. Well, in fact, when the slaves were freed and Lincoln came to visit the slaves who were traveling with the army, the slaves did fall at his feet in gratitude. They did fall at his feet because they knew he was lifting them up. So when you get rid of the tradition, you're actually getting rid of your own ideas. That's the paradox of radical of politics. So what did Jesus do that got rid of this radical, the fact that on one hand, governments can be corrupt and they can be unjust and they can have unjust traditions. And on the other hand, the traditions, the ideas that led to that moment when you see that something your government is doing is wrong, created your idea that it was wrong, if you see what I mean. In other words, we knew that slavery was wrong, because somebody had said all men are created equal. But somebody said all men are created equal because there was a Christian religion to teach him that. So when the people said, oh, these evil Christians, they didn't stand up against slavery, they helped get rid of slavery because of the ideas. They created the idea that slavery was wrong. As I sat down to start the show today, perfect timing, my doorbell rang, and it was the flowers I ordered for my wife for Valentine's Day. I wanted her to have them over the weekend. You want to be able to respond wherever you are to people coming to your door, and that's why a Ring doorbell is a great...
Cringy. All right. Hopefully this guy gets to the point a little bit. Hopefully it's a little bit deeper than just slavery was bad.
How did Jesus deal with it? Well, here is a story, and it's a really famous story and a very interesting story for a lot of reasons. Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives. But early the next morning, he was back again at the temple. He was preaching in the temple, and a crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. And as he was speaking, the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. They put her in front of the crowd. Teacher, they said to Jesus, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? They were trying to trap him into saying something that they could use against him, but Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger, and we don't know what he wrote in the dust with his finger. And they kept demanding an answer, so he stood up again and said, all right, let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. Then he stooped down again and wrote in the dust. And when the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, right, the people who knew best, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Then Jesus stood up and said to the woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? And she said, no, Lord, no one condemned me. And Jesus said, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Now, what's interesting about this is nobody likes the story. Leftists don't like it, and conservatives don't like it. The leftists don't like it because Jesus doesn't stand up against the law, but conservatives don't like it because they say, if you don't stone her, then everyone will commit adultery, right? If you don't keep the values in place, then everyone will do the bad thing. And conservatives go to incredible lengths to take the meaning out of the story. Some of them, there even is a movement to take this story out of the Gospels because it's not in the earliest copies of the Gospels we have. And so they want to take it out of the Gospels saying it's illegitimate. It was put in later on by a copyist. But in fact, there are tales like this very early on about Jesus. And if that doesn't sound like Jesus to you, I think that sounds exactly like him. I'm sure the story is precisely true. So why doesn't Jesus say, this is a terrible law? He does say that, he says that about the law on divorce. He changes the law on divorce. Why doesn't he say, you can't stone somebody for committing adultery? That's a savage, terrible thing to do. And I think the reason is this, that he knows that the tradition and the commandment not to commit adultery is an important one. It is where the rights of women, and to a large degree, come from. The idea that your marriage to a woman should be faithful is an idea that developed over time. Remember, in Jesus' time, there were people who were married to many women, but the idea that the whole idea that men should also be faithful, should not commit adultery, that develops slowly over time. The church imposes it on the idea of marriage. It is where the rights of women come from. Jesus does not condemn this woman, even though he has spoken against adultery. He doesn't condemn her. He forgives her. And he says to people, let him who is without sin throw the first stone. And of course, nobody's without sin. So he lets the law stand, but he makes it impossible. He makes it impossible to fulfill. He makes it impossible to fulfill by rewriting the hearts of the people who have to enforce the law. And this to me is one of the great political innovations of all time. Instead of changing the law, even an unjust law, he first establishes in the hearts of the people why that law cannot be enforced as it stands, and the law rewrites itself. And this is why I feel the church has shot itself in the foot by becoming political. You know, in C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters are a wonderful book. You should read it. It takes about an hour to read the whole book. But it's basically about a demon, a chief demon, teaching an apprentice demon how to destroy religion and how to destroy something.
There's all kinds of C.S. Lewis on my reading list. I was supposed to read Space Trilogy. I have the whole Space Trilogy in one book. Jay Dyer always recommends that. It's kind of a dystopian novel. Mere Christianity, that's a really popular one that people recommend. Haven't got around to the C.S. Lewis pill yet.
Somebody's soul. And this is what the demon says about destroying religion. He says, we do want, and want very much, this is a demon speaking, he says, we want very much to make men treat Christianity as a means, preferably, of course, as a means to their own advancement, but failing that, as a means to anything, even to social justice. The thing to do is to get a man at first to value social justice as a thing which God demands, and then work him onto the stage at which he values Christianity because it may produce social justice. For God will not be used as a convenience. In other words, God will not be used as a means. God is the end. He is what you are trying to get toward.
Yeah.
So let's take a hypothetical, right? Your car isn't working. It needs a part. What do you want to do? Do you want to get in your car and pretend to drive to the auto parts store, look at it, talk to a make-believe person because you're not really there, who looks on his make-believe computer and finds you a part that you can't even have because you're not there because your car's not working? No. You want to go to rockauto.com. Why? Because it's so much fun to say rockauto.com. Plus, you can get a part for your car just by going on your computer.
I've been tricked into watching another ad. Yeah, chakras are a no-no, guys. I used to be into that chakra shit, and it's just not something you worry about. People don't have magic powers. One of the many benefits of being a Christian, the biggest being, of course, that you're going to be saved, which is really like why you should do it first and foremost, but you don't need to worry about magic. In the occult, it's like, oh, I need to cultivate my spirituality. I need to work on my chakras. I need to meditate for hours and open my mind. I recommend to you as a Christian that that's not important at all. You should read. You should study. Like, instead of meditating and trying to clear your chakras or whatever, watch some documentaries, read some books, read the Bible. Things are very practical as Christians. You know, atheists like to lump everybody together. It's like, oh, you Christians are, you believe in magic. Like, actually, no, that's pagans. It's like, oh, you Christians are doing magic rituals to try to manipulate magical hoo-ha. That's what pagans do. That's what mystics do. Christians pray to God. You ask God for things. You got to get over the idea that we as people have powers. Even in the occult, people don't have powers. You're trying to work with demons and principalities and wickedness, grimoires. I just start with the idea that people do not have magic powers. If you're doing magic, you're working with demonic entities, and it's bad, and you shouldn't do it, guys. So, a chakra necklace, I don't really know why you'd want a chakra necklace, you know. Let's keep it real.
So, at any moment, when a heart is transformed by a relationship to God, he is going to come to a point where he says, you know, stoning a woman for adultery is not going to play. It's not going to work. Holding another man's a slave is not going to work. It has to be stopped. When that happens, one of those people might be a Democrat and one might be a Republican, and they may turn to each other and say, we have to do this in two totally different ways. But they're both going to agree on the principle that slavery is wrong and on the principle that you cannot stone people to death for their sexual peccadillos. And so the church has lost the people because it is treating God as a means instead of as an end. If you treat God as an end, and this is true for all of us, it's not true for any, just for the churches. If you treat God as an end, your heart is transformed, and that transforms your politics. And then we start to argue over means. And that's why the left is so destructive right now. It's so destructive, getting rid of our traditions, getting rid of our religion, getting rid of the thing that will make us move forward in a way that will not be destructive and will not destroy all the good things that have grown up over the centuries. And that to me is Christian politics. Christian politics is not left, it's not right. Christian politics isn't politics at all. Christian politics is a relationship with God who will change your heart.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's some cheesy music, but yeah, I went ahead and subbed to this guy. I liked his take. I like breathing stuff like Wim Hof. Me too. You know, stuff that's like helping your health. It's just it's good to know specifically like what specifically about meditation is bad. When you're trying to do void meditation, like half an hour or an hour of I'm trying to empty my mind. I'm trying to have a complete absence of thought and avoid meditation, which for most people is very difficult to do. That was the goal of my meditation for the years that I spent in the occult. And ultimately, if you get really good at that, you could be opening yourself up to like demonic influence. It's not a positive thing. So if you wanted to do like a 5-minute relaxation session, maybe put on like some ocean videos with ocean sounds, and I would say like you're good to do like maybe a 5-10 minute relaxation session. Any longer than that, and I personally just think it's like awkward. Once you're starting to do half an hour plus, now you're kind of like going into that territory where you're trying to maybe open yourself up for some sort of a strange demonic experience. So I wouldn't be overly paranoid about it. Esoteric says he's worried about even maybe wearing like a cross necklace. I don't take things that far. Protestants are very adamant against, you know, icon. Like they say that Orthodox Christians pray to icons. Well, they do. Orthodox Christians do pray to icons, but they say that could be idolatry. I don't take a very strong stance on this kind of stuff. Even like holidays, you know, if you watch any horror movies during Halloween, if you carve a pumpkin, if you hand out candy, you're celebrating a pagan, demonic holiday. I don't have strong stances on that kind of stuff. I just say be wary, and, you know, like maybe even doing yoga. Like I have like a 20-minute yoga workout that I do sometimes. I think that's fine. But when you take it too far into the pure spiritual aspect, like doing asanas, which, you know, a lot of them were designed to glorify pagan gods, you just got to be wary and think about why you're doing stuff. If you want to take part in meditation, I would say 5 to 10 minutes of relaxing with some music where you're not trying to do void meditation, but you are kind of trying to be in control of your thoughts. You're being mindful. 5 to 10 minutes of mindfulness meditation, I think, is fine. It's all just about why are you doing it. And I would, you know, pray to God before and after your meditation. Pray that he guides your meditation relaxation session, and then, you know, thank him afterwards. Should be all hoodie. Sauna is good as long as it's not toxic fluoride SSRI water. Yeah, saunas are legit. Alrighty, yeah, you can see what's in your head without reacting. Yeah, trying to be wary of your thoughts, have control of your thoughts, not letting intrusive thoughts pop in, and working on your focus. There's a balance of being able to improve that kind of a thing without sinking into half an hour plus void meditation. I believe you guys can figure it out. I personally haven't really been doing a lot of meditation at all, but sometimes I think it wouldn't hurt. And then there's biblical meditation where you could memorize a psalm or something and then just kind of repeat it in your mind for a while, or even listen to it on tape. I made a couple of biblical passage meditation tracks. I think it's on my other YouTube channel. Maybe it's on this one. You can check those out sometime. Let's see what this guy says. Everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities. Romans 13:1. Submit yourself for the Lord's sake to every authority. 1 Peter 2:13. Let's put these verses in context. The key to understanding is in the word submit. Take a look at this. The Greek and hupotasso, which has been translated as submit or be subject, literally means to arrange stuff respectfully in an orderly manner underneath. The simple meaning of social orderliness would have been understood by our original readers, but it is a little obscured in our English translation. Here's the main point. Governing authorities are necessary for keeping the peace. God is a God of order, not anarchy or chaos. And so, here's the most important thing to remember. In the New Testament Greek, to submit does not always mean to obey. Submit and obey are two separate actions or postures. Followers of Jesus deliberately disobeyed laws that were in conflict with God's commands. They still submitted to the authorities by accepting the legal consequences of their actions. Well, you know, I'm thinking about Titus. There's a section in Titus that talks about submitting to authorities, but it does. The people who hid Anne Frank were breaking the law, while those who snitched were obeying the law. Next question. How about Jesus turning over the tables at the temple? That was against their law. Why did he do it? The people were violating a higher law. They were using the court of the Gentiles to cheat people and make money off the poor, both keeping the Gentiles from approaching God and taking God's name in vain, using him to make a profit. So the higher law says to stand against evil, and we must fight evil because of love, not because of our frustration. Jesus disobeyed the priests, which were the authorities to the Jews, set aside the Romans, William Tyndale, Corrie ten Boom, the Pilgrims, people that hid slaves in the mid-1800s, and the first century church that hid in the catacombs. All of these people disobeyed the law, and I don't think that they were in sin disobeying Romans 13. Following God is more important than following the law. Laws are for the non-believers, which can be good if the laws are just for them. I grew up Catholic, so we just prayed rosary over and over. I pray the rosary sometimes. I feel like it's cleansing. I feel like it's healing. I feel like it's just showing your dedication to God. It's respectful. I don't always pray the rosary. Sometimes I just pray normally. Sometimes I recite a memorized psalm or passage. But I have a rosary, and I pray it sometimes. I definitely don't think there's anything wrong with the Hail Mary. She is full of grace. She is the most holy of women, and asking for her to pray for you, I think is fine. All right, guys. Well, we have passed the hour-and-a-half mark. You know, we used to go for up to like 2 hours or 2.5 hours. I just don't force it, you know. If the podcast ends up being that long, great. But it seems like we kind of got this unspoken thing. It at least should be about an hour and 15 to an hour and a half. If it goes longer, that's fine. But I think we've had a decent podcast today. After I did confirmation when I was like 10, I threw up all my food. Sussy! Well, I don't know anything about that. I did First Communion and all that. I was taking communion at the Catholic Church when I was a lad. I went to Sunday school and all that. I prayed the rosary back when I was young and in Catholic school, but not since, just the Lord's Prayer every night. I think it's really cool to have all of those things memorized, to memorize the Apostles' Creed, memorize the Lord's Prayer. That's an absolute must. To have the Hail Mary memorized. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be. I think it's just cool to have that stuff memorized. All right, guys. Well, I definitely urge you all to just try to stay cozy, try to stay comfy in these times. Things are definitely getting crazy in the world. Taking things day by day over here. For me, I feel like working out is really important. I've made a observation. I feel like I've been working out so hard because life just kind of feels like a prison right now. I feel like I'm in prison, dude. And you know what? I'm starting to think it makes sense that I'm not doing the runs. I feel like runs are kind of a luxury. People in prison, my understanding is they probably don't run. Maybe there's tracks in some prisons, but, you know, it burns a lot of calories. It's to have like extra amazing cardio for competing. Like if you're a competitive boxer, I can definitely see running. And I'm not completely anti-running. It makes sense to me. I'm doing stuff that I can do at home, hitting the bag, jump roping, shadow boxing, lots of calisthenics. If I could find a damn workout partner, I'd be down to like go to the gym with a workout partner. I think that'd be cool. Kind of keeping my eye out for a potential workout partner. Will there be a post stream? There certainly could be. I don't really see why not. Maybe in like an hour or so, I'll check in and we'll see what's happening. I just don't want the streams to go on for way too long. I'll go ahead and pray for us, and then we'll wrap up the podcast for today. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, I ask that you protect me and all my viewers here. I ask that you protect the world from the terrors of war and chaos that it includes, such as famine, fear, death, sickness. I ask that you help us to have peace in our lives, that you guide people toward your word and your truth, and that you help us to have some cozy holidays in the midst of all this fear and terror that we're experiencing in the world right now. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for your protection, for your guidance. I am sorry for my sin, for my lust, and I ask that you forgive me and the viewers of this channel and anyone who decides to follow you and repent to you. Thank you, God. I'm very grateful for everything that you have done in my life, and I ask that you continue to bring blessings into my life, to the lives of my family, and to the lives of my viewers and friends. Thank you. I ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.